What's going on, guys? We're back for another week of fights. This time it's UFC Vegas 50. I can't believe we're already at 50 fights in this UFC Apex in this COVID era, but here we are. This time it's Magomed Ankalaev taking on Thiago Santos. So a fun light heavyweight main event. It should be a good time as long as it lasts. Currently, this is a 14-fight card, so I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's just get into these fights. Okay, what a treat this is between Chris Moutinho, the return of the GOAT, Chris Moutinho, taking on Guido Cannetti. I mean, they had to reward Chris Moutinho with another fight in the octagon after he was Sean O'Malley's punching bag for three whole rounds, surprisingly, before Herb Dean, kind of mercy stopped him in round 3, stopped the beatdown he was taking, but they gave him the most winnable fight in the bantamweight division, probably, in Guido Cannetti. If Chris Moutinho wins the UFC fight, it would be this one against Guido Cannetti. 42-year-old bantamweight, remarkable. He's still a bantamweight at that age. He's way past usually what we consider to be the fall-off range for a bantamweight fighter. But much wider array of skills for Guido Cannetti. Much better competition he's faced. A better career. But he's 42, and on a 3-fight losing streak, he kind of falls off a cliff after round 2 cardio-wise. And if there's something you can tell about Chris Moutinho, it's that he can walk forward at least and hold his hands up, albeit not that effectively, but he can do that for 3 rounds. So you kind of know that you've got that advantage going for Chris. I don't think that durability that he showed in the Sean O'Malley fight is repeatable. I think that might have been just like kind of a once-in-a-lifetime fluky thing for him. I don't think that didn't prove to me that he's that durable, honestly. I don't know how repeatable that is. If him and Sean O'Malley fought 10 times, I would imagine Sean O'Malley does get him out of there most of the time. So, not much you can say here. This is about as low confidence as it gets, about as 50-50 as it gets. So for that, I'm going to take Guido Cannetti, the guy who with more experience. At least in round 1, he'll have more skill unless he falls off a cliff. In round 2, maybe Chris can take over, but there's no way I'm going to take Chris Moutinho as a favorite over anybody in the UFC. I have to take the guy with the better experience, more proven, at least in some ways in the past, and most importantly here, plus money on Guido Cannetti. Definitely not betting this fight. If there's going to be a PRP or a parlay for the night, this will be the last thing I would add to that. Just kind of to wrap it up, or it's just a pass altogether. But give me Guido Cannetti, the more proven guy, plus money. No way I'm picking Chris Moutinho as a favorite. There you have it. Okay, up next we got a middleweight bout between Lungiambula taking on Cody Brundage. Cody Brundage we're seeing for a second time here. He most recently on short notice took on Nick Maximov and took him to a 1 to 2 round decision. So it was close enough. He actually won one of those rounds against Maximov, looked very good in the wrestling department, which now in hindsight we see is pretty good against Nick Maximov, especially on short notice. So pretty talented wrestler, talented grappler. He's going to be met with a match here against Lungiambula, who's pretty good at some good reversals, some good judo throws. He's shown he's very physically strong. He'll be backed up against the cage, and then right as soon as his opponent tries to force him against the cage, he's got some nice reversals, some nice trips, good underhooks. He reverses position on the cage pretty well. Very strong, and once he gets on top, if and when he does get on top, he's very, very physically imposing on top. Very powerful with the striking, especially early in round 1, early in the fight. He can fade late, but he's had a couple spots where he's shown power late in fights too. So, kind of low volume guy is Lungiambula, but I still think on the feet it'll be pretty close against Cody Brundage, who we just haven't seen much of against top-level competition. So at least Dolce, even at 205 and now at 185, we've seen him fight some pretty solid opposition. Most recently, he took Marc-Andre Barriault to decision. Pretty good there, just to stay defensively sound enough against him. He actually looked pretty good in some spots, especially in round 1. Magomed Ankalaev, he was able to stay defensively sound against for as long as that lasted until he eventually got finished, but it is Ankalaev. So my point is we've just seen him against better competition, be able to hold his own. Like I said, he does have some issues. He is a little bit slow in the feet as the fight goes on, a little low volume. Cody Brundage's path to victory here would definitely be to make this a slow, grindy fight. He would have to get the better of the clinch against the cage. He'd have to get Dolce to the ground, in my opinion, to make this fight, decisive. And just especially watch out for that early power of Dalcha Lungiambula, who I think will probably have the edge striking-wise, even though I think it might be closer than we see on paper here. But, just as a pick, I've got to go with Dalcha Lungiambula. Just the guy, just the slight lean, a slight confidence I have in him just because he's more proven. I see Brundage kind of entering in, looking for takedowns repeatedly, which he should do. But if they don't come or if he gets reversed, I think he will accept position on the bottom. I think Dalcha will be a little bit too strong for him. And we talk about Dalcha Lungiambula slowing down in fights. I could see the same thing happening to Cody Brundage. I mean, I've got no more proof that he's got a better gas tank later on in fights, especially if he goes for the wrestling against a much more physically imposing guy that might tire him out and end up doing him in for his own defeat in the end. So give me Dalcha Lungiambula. I think he will win a decision in this spot against Cody Brundage. The odds are pretty close. I mean, it's almost at a pick'em right now, so I think you can get maybe slight underdog money on Brundage right now, but I think by the time this closes, it will probably be a pick'em. So, like I said, give me Dalcha in this spot. Up next, the women's flyweight bout between Sabina Mazo and Miranda Maverick. Now, this is kind of a black and white fight in the way that the odds are set up plus 245 underdog price for Sabina Mazo, pretty decently sized underdog, against a short notice replacement Miranda Maverick, already a minus 310 favorite. So with these odds, it's a black and white fight in the way that you're pretty much, if you're betting minus 310 on Miranda Maverick as a favorite, you have to be assuming that she gets the takedowns pretty much every round here, or at least 2 out of 3, guaranteed. Sabina Mazo, the much longer, taller woman, 5'7", 70-inch reach, against the shorter Miranda Maverick, 5'3", 65.5-inch reach. Both girls are 24 years old, so young and improving. Even there, but like I said, the size difference, and Sabina Mazo is just a little bit more active, a little bit more technical on the feet. So if she keeps it standing, she probably wins the fight. If Miranda Maverick manages to get the control time in the majority of 2 rounds, she probably wins the fight. And like I said, with those giant favorite odds that Miranda Maverick carries here, I think the gambling market and the fans alike see that she is probably the more technical fighter with the bigger upside in the division, in my opinion. Both girls they're young, but they're coming off of 2 losses apiece. Now, Sabina Mazo, I think, earned her losses. I think Miranda Maverick, though, I mean, obviously, she should be coming off of 1 loss, and she won against Macy Barber last summer. That was a complete robbery. Sal Diamato definitely robbed us on that one. Horrible judging on his part, even calling that for Macy Barber. I think that will carry with Miranda Maverick. I think that'll kind of eat away at her still, and I think when she gets in those control time positions, granted, if she gets these takedowns in this fight, I think when she's in the control time position, she will be a little bit more active on top, either threaten submissions, use some ground and pound, advance positions, and keep that control time. Be visually active for that decision call here. I don't see her finishing Sabina Mazo in this bout. Sabina Mazo is just coming off of, I think, her first into the distance loss. But that was to Maria Agapova, who carries a different kind of power early on, in this division. So actually, that was the 3rd round finish. But nonetheless, she took a huge strike at club and subbed basically by the much larger, much more powerful Maria Agapova. I don't see that happening against the smaller Miranda Maverick here. I do see Miranda Maverick getting the better of some striking exchanges. And in the middle of that success, on the feet, I think she will switch, level change, and get that takedown that she needs. Sabina Mazo, much taller, much higher center of gravity. I think it'll lend itself for her getting dumped on her back by Miranda Maverick here. Miranda Maverick will secure 2 out of 3, if not all 3 rounds. I think you should probably play her by decision here instead of that minus 310 on the money line, which will probably increase a few points by the time fight night hits. So give me Miranda Maverick here to win a clear-cut, unanimous decision. Featherweight bout up next between Damon Jackson and Kenwilla Kirk. This one should be pretty fun. I mean, 2 grapple-heavy approaches from both of these guys. The younger man, Kenwilla Kirk, 27 years old, 5'10", with a 75-inch reach. 4 inches of reach over Damon Jackson, 5'11", 33 years old is Damon Jackson. The older man, more experience professionally, better competition he's faced. Both guys have very similar game plan, though. They both are pretty grapple-heavy approaches, a lot of submissions on their record. Damon Jackson, just the better, I think, the better grappler here. So if this I know sometimes we see fights where two grapplers kind of never go to the ground. They just kind of have this awkward striking battle between the two. Both of these guys, by the numbers striking-wise, they both, pretty low volume. They both absorb more shots than they put out to their opponents. I think this will be a scramble fest on the ground. I think both of these guys will engage each other against to and against the takedowns. I think Damon Jackson is the better guy here, though, grappling-wise. I think he has that better strategy. I think sometimes when you have two guys that are, if you got like a mid-tier striker and then you've got an elite striker, the mid-tier striker could win a large percent of the time. I mean, there's sometimes the disparity just is kind of closer on the feet than it is on the ground. I think if you have like a black belt BJJ against, a blue belt, that black belt will probably win, almost every single time. It'll look a lot less close on the ground. I think that's going to happen here between Damon Jackson and Camilla Kirk. I think Damon Jackson is going to get the better of these scrambles, always end up in the control time positions he wants, always get the ability to threaten the submissions that he wants to. Whether or not he gets those submissions against Kirk, I'm not sure, but I think he will spend more time, Damon Jackson, in those control time positions, at least firing enough strikes to keep it, not a stalemate and stood up. We saw against Charles Rosa, he kind of did pretty much what I think he'll do in this fight as well, is just get the better of the control time, much more activity where he wants it. And I think he'll cruise to a pretty easy decision here against Camilla Kirk. So give me Damon Jackson to win a pretty clear-cut decision here. The odds are -110 apiece right now as it stands. I think pretty soon Damon Jackson will be the favorite in this fight. He opened up as the underdog, and money's just come pouring in on him. I think people kind of see at the market's going to adjust, and I think he will be the favorite by the time the fight kicks off. Okay, up next, we have a bantamweight bout between Trevin Five-Star Jones and Javid Basharat. Basharat is making his official UFC debut after coming off of the win on the Contender Series. That was an interesting fight on the Contender Series because it was two guys who boasted really, really big undefeated records over questionable competition. And if you look at Oran Cologne's record, I think he was like 16-0 when he faced Javid on the Contender Series. And you can see, I think the odds were actually flipped by the end of that fight because people could kind of look and even just wiki cap and see that guy's record was horribly, horribly padded over some really low-level competition. Javid ended up winning that fight by submission in round 3. As we kind of predicted he was, if you, watch the regional scene, watch some of the sketchy fights that Cologne guy was in. But Javid Basharat's got a pretty sketchy, record himself. I mean, not a lot of high-level competition, which will make Trevin Five-Star Jones his biggest test to date. Obviously, Trevin Jones has a 13-7 record, so it looks pretty bad on paper for an up-and-coming bantamweight. But, man, they've only fed him the most challenging competition possible. I mean, he made his debut on short notice against Timur Valiev, knocked him out. Went up against Mario Batista, knocked him out. And then they brought him up against Kakramanov in his last fight, which he lost by third-round submission. But, I mean, they've really done him no favors in his UFC career so far, and he's done very, very well. So, at 31 years old, 5'7", 70-inch reach, and at plus 125, the underdog, the comeback on Javid Basharat, the debutant is -150 favorite here. You got to believe that 11-0 record that Javid boasts is probably part of that. He's a pretty equal opportunity finisher in his career. He's got decision, knockout, submission wins of varying types. But at plus money, I got to favor Trevin Jones here. I like him to win the fight regardless of the odds. I think he's a very crafty striker. He gets his timing down on his opponents pretty well. Pretty good reads on what their movements are. And by round 2, he gets that knockout. And I think he could do it again here against Javid Basharat. Trevin's last fight, the downfall was shooting for takedowns repeatedly, trying to work the grappling, get the fight down, and wearing himself out, eventually getting caught and submitted by Kakramanov, who I'm pretty high on. I think that guy's the real deal in the bantamweight division. Javid Basharat looks pretty good. His striking is, pretty high level. He's got pretty good takedown defense as well, I've seen. But I just have not seen him. He looks good against this low-level competition. I have not seen him against anybody of Trevin Jones' caliber. We'll probably learn a lot here from this fight. We'll see where Javid Basharat is in the division. But for now, I got to take Trevin Five-Star Jones to win by second round KO, TKO. If I can find a prop and inside the distance on Trevin Jones, maybe I'd go that route, but at plus 125, plus 130, I think it's climbing to alone. I think let's not get greedy. That's pretty good price on an underdog as experienced as Trevin Jones. Up next, another women's flyweight bout between Jillian Robertson and J.J. Aldrich. This should be an interesting fight, just in terms of another one of these fights like the one that we talked about before, the last women's flyweight bout, where one fighter really needs to get this to the ground desperately. One fighter wants to keep it, probably standing or take it to the ground. J.J. Aldrich, I think, has kind of the advantage in the striking realm, not only frame-wise with her reach, but I think just skill-wise as well. Usually if Jillian Robertson can't get the fight to the grappling realm where she's good at, the MMA game, she kind of falls apart, and I don't really see where she's going to have, too much opportunity to win against J.J. Aldrich on the feet. I think she desperately needs to get this fight to the ground, and if she can't do it, I think she's going to lose the fight. Now, J.J. Aldrich is somebody whose grappling still needs to be tested a little bit. She still needs to test and show us that she can, prove to the fans and to herself that she can kind of defend against a high-level grappler like Jillian Robertson. Somebody who's, maybe not the highest level that we've seen, but at least tenacious in her attempt to get it to the ground, and pretty physically strong as Jillian Robertson. So I think Jillian Robertson has a path to win this fight. I think she could get a submission or at least secure enough control time. And that's why I find this fight to be very sketchy. From a betting perspective, she's a right now, minus 130 favorite over J.J. Aldrich, the plus 110 underdog. I think that's going to close to almost a pick'em. I think that was a lot wider when it opened up, and for good reason. A little bit of recency bias. Whenever a female fighter in these lighter weight classes gets a finish, like Jillian Robertson just got that finish over Priscilla Cachoeira in her last fight. First round rear naked choke, I want to say, like a second left in that first round, if memory serves me correct. Whenever you get that finish with these lighter weight classes for women, I mean, you're instantly like, you got a bunch of recency bias in the lines, which, kind of makes sense. Finishes don't happen that often in these lighter weight classes for women. So once somebody gets a finish, whether it be a knockout, a TKO, or a submission, you got to kind of take notice of that. So it's definitely reflected in the odds, but now the market's correcting and seeing that J.J. Aldrich is probably the more polished fighter as far as like a complete MMA game goes, in my opinion. And I think I do favor her to win a decision in this fight. The issue is that if Jillian Robertson can secure enough control time in 2 rounds, where it's like she gets pieced up on the feet, but then eventually like gets the back of J.J. Aldrich or ends up on top, or gets, a few minutes of control time where it's close in a couple of the judges' eyes. Every now and then we get those judges where they just say, oh, wow, well, this person was on top or in control positions for, 2 minutes of 2 of the rounds, and then it ends up being a split decision. So if Jillian Robertson was plus money here, it might behoove us to pick her by like a sketchy decision. But since she's the favorite currently, and since I think that JJ is the more polished MMA fighter, I'm going to pick JJ to win a decision here. I would probably look at the props for JJ by decision. If that was juicy enough, I would take it, especially since I think this will close at a pick'em. But if you can get JJ Aldrich at plus money right now, I would take that for her to win by decision. Okay, up next, a welterweight bout between AJ Fletcher, the new debutante, taking on Matt Semelsberger. I'm very excited for this fight because at 170, these guys are pretty giant. Matt Semelsberger, more like long and rangy type of frame. AJ Fletcher, a jacked 5'10". Still a decently long reach though, 67-inch reach, but Matt Semelsberger is going to be far and away 75-inch reach. 9-3 Matt Semelsberger, and we haven't seen a whole lot of him. Not that he hasn't been active, but his last 3 fights have, 1 3-round loss to Chaos Williams, and around that, sandwiching that fight were the 16-second or 15-second win over Matt Sano, who was kind of just a bum in there, on the, what was that? I think that was the UFC 266 card, where it was one of like the Diaz brothers' buddies came in. So easy win there, didn't see much of him. And before the Chaos Williams loss, we saw him against Jason Witt with like a 16-second, once again, a 1-round, 1-hitter-quitter knockout. So not a whole lot from him. Before that, he had debuted against Carlton Minus, that guy from the Alaskan regional scene, that he won a 3-round decision over. So haven't seen a whole lot from Matt Semelsberger, although he does look like he's got the goods at 170. Like I said, very good frame for the division, long, tall. He keeps people at the end of his punches, uses his range pretty well, a good sense of timing, and awesome power. Now, AJ Fletcher, though, all of those things and more, I think, in my opinion. He's a little bit younger, 25, 9-0 record professionally. He took his 2 losses already on the amateur scene. So he had some quick finishes as an amateur, ended up dropping 2 decisions and then coming back and winning a few decisions in his the end of his amateur career and into his professional career. A lot of stoppages, a lot of club and sub submissions, guillotines, things of that nature. And now, coming off that impressive flying knee, showing some athleticism against the cage on the Contender Series, against a pretty formidable opponent too. I like AJ Fletcher. This is a pretty good fight for him, I think. I think he's going to be able to get on the inside. He doesn't seem to be afraid of getting on the inside of Matt Semelsberger. If you hear this kid talk, he's a very well-spoken, seems to have a good sense of his weaknesses, in terms of, like, he knows that he's got to get at the inside against Matt Semelsberger. He's used to being, although he hasn't fought a lot of guys, I kind of looked through a lot of the physiques of the guys that he's been up against in his professional regional scene career. I tried to find if there's somebody as tall as Matt Semelsberger with that kind of reach. I didn't really find any. A couple of guys like in the 6-foot range that he did well against, but nobody on the level of Matt Semelsberger. So this will be a first for him, but he seems to know what he needs to do. A lot to like about this kid, a lot of upside at 25 years old. He seems kind of mature beyond his years so far. Not to be surprised, a jacked biology major coming out of the Louisiana regional scene. So, I might be biased there, another fucking smart jacked guy coming in the scene, but I like AJ Fletcher in this bout, especially because he's like a plus 200, plus 190-ish underdog in this spot. So, what can't you like about that? I think he's got a lot more of a chance in this fight than the odds suggest. He's been to decisions. He's an equal opportunity finisher as far as strikes, submissions, and I think he's got he seems to have the gas tank to go, if this fight goes long. So we haven't seen a whole lot from Matt Semelsberger, although the part that we have seen, he does look good. But, losing to Chaos Williams from Semelsberger, not a big knock against him, especially now that as it lost, that has aged well. But I'm going to take, I think it's an even fight here as far as there's some unknowns with Semelsberger. We see how athletic and powerful AJ Fletcher is and looks. But since he is such a heavy underdog, I will choose him to win this fight. I'm going to choose him to win this fight. I think it ends in the first round. Give me AJ Fletcher to win by first round submission. I'm going to call it submission here. Club and sub. Maybe a guillotine in the first round. Okay, this is a great card. When this is kicking off, the main card is Bruno Silva taking on Alex Pereira. So Alex Pereira, of course, notoriously known for being the guy to knock out the current champion Israel Adesanya in the kickboxing scene back in their pro days. Alex Pereira is one of the best known professional kickboxers, the guy who's kind of done it all in the striking world. He's got a very, very powerful strikes in the hands, knees, kicks, and now he's diving into, kind of finishing where he started in his professional mixed martial arts career. He had a couple sprinkled bouts early on. Now he's dove into the UFC. They've got a pretty good way to build him up, as a threat to the throne of Israel Adesanya, since they kind of have that history. Bruno Silva is a good test, and it's a good fight. It's going to be a striker versus striker matchup. Bruno Silva, of course, does have some grappling in his back pocket that he has been pretty unsuccessful in using. He hasn't really had to use it. He got out-grappled by Andrew Sanchez in their last fight before getting that third round knockout, saving the day, saving everybody's, parlays and bets in that fight. A lot to like with Bruno Silva, a lot more to like with Alex Pereira, I think, being a larger man, 6-inch reach advantage, 80-inch reach, 6'4" at 185, pretty a large guy. And he's fought all the way up at light heavyweight, 205. So, coming down to 185, sticking at this weight, it looks like it's a manageable weight cut for him, and he's large and in charge in this weight class. I like Alex Pereira in this fight. Obviously, the grappling is going to be his weakness. Now, he's training, with a good team that can, I'm sure he's drilling the hell out of that, because he doesn't need to drill the strikes anymore. He's got that mastered, literally mastered. But still, it's not a lot of time to, at 4-1 professionally in MMA to fix up that hole in the game. It's probably always going to be a hole in his game against guys that have been doing it for a long time as a complete mixed martial artist. But I don't know. You can't. There's a path to victory for Bruno Silva to grapple, and that's probably what he should do, is because he's not going to be the better striker in this match. But I think that since he's got so much power in his legs and his hands, I think that Bruno Silva will probably find spots to challenge Alex Pereira and go toe-to-toe with him on the feet in this matchup, and I think that'll be his downfall. The issue is, he could play a smart fight, and that's the issue. We have to try to get into his head and see if he plays a smart fight. Gets the clinch time against the cage, grinds the fight to the ground, wears on Alex Pereira, makes it a long fight, and gets some of that power out of the powerful strikes of Alex Pereira. But the issue is, can we expect him to do that for 15 minutes if need be? I'm not so sure I can bet on that. At plus money, plus 150 for Bruno Silva, minus 170 for Alex Pereira. The odds are tempting to me. The odds are tempting to me to bet the underdog in this fight. But it's so iffy, when I have to get into the mind of the fighter and really think, are they gonna take the smart option? I just feel like Bruno Silva's fallen too much in love with his power, and who wouldn't if you're as powerful as him, as athletic as he is as a middleweight? But I don't think I'm gonna put a bet on this fight, honestly. If anything, you might want to play the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm sure that's juiced just knowing these two guys, so that might be sketchy. So this will probably be a pass betting-wise for me, and if I have parlays for the night, this will be like the bottom edge of the ticket, because this could go either way. I think it's either Bruno Silva, plays a very, very smart, passive fight, probably draws some boos from the crowd as he, does not make it a fun fight, but I think he's going to engage in the striking at some point, and I think he does get finished by Alex Pereira. So my pass betting-wise, but as a prediction, I'll take Alex Pereira to win via... I'll take a round 2 KO for Alex Pereira. Up next, the lightweight bout. Another very interesting fight on this card between Terrence McKinney stepping in on less than 2 weeks' notice against Drew Dober. Drew Dober coming off of 2 losses now. Again, his losses are all the good guys. Brad Riddell, Islam Makhachev, Benil Dariush, Olivier Aubin-Mercier, that guy. I mean, just these losses are against the top guys. Terrence McKinney, 12-3, just coming off of another first-round submission win over Faraz Ziam. His hands aren't even sore. He barely broke a sweat, and at 27 years old, he's continuing his rise up the lightweight ranks here. So plus 150, the underdog price on Terrence McKinney, minus 170, the favorite price on Drew Dober. I think that price, the price is obviously because of the super short notice nature of this fight. But who is Drew Dober supposed to fight? Drew Dober is supposed to fight Ricky Glenn, a guy who used to train over, I'm not sure if he still does, over in my neck of the woods here by Rufus Sports MMA. He was at a jiu-jitsu gym over here as well. So good jiu-jitsu, good boxing. He's primarily a striker. Boxing background, not a wrestle-heavy guy. There's only like 1 or 2 fights in the UFC that he's actually gotten takedowns, and not a very takedown-heavy guy. That's the type of guy that beats Drew Dober. So it was a good matchup for Drew Dober to get a bounce back. I think that's kind of what they wanted from Drew Dober, is to get a bounce back spot. Somebody who's not, just gonna, wrestle fuck him. In that bout. Drew Dober's 33 years old, 5'10". Terrence McKinney going to have 3 inches of reach over him in this fight too. So Ricky Glenn, they would have had the same reach, but in this fight, he's at a reach disadvantage. Terrence McKinney, a guy who's been boasting about his wrestling background, a guy who just showed us his grappling chops, his grappling potential against Faraz Ziam, a guy who, is a powerful striker too. So I'm starting to like Terrence McKinney as an underdog in this spot when I talk through it and I talk about who Drew Dober was supposed to fight, who he was preparing for, and now he's getting a totally different opponent. A guy who's a little bit faster, a little bit more powerful, younger, more athletic it seems like, and can probably threaten where Drew Dober is weak. So it won't be, I think this might be a tougher matchup for Drew Dober. Now, obviously Terrence McKinney has that kind of the Matt Semelsberger problem that we talked about earlier in that fight where all of his finishes are very, very quick. We have not, again, seen him dragged out late in a fight, so this could be the match where it happens. This could be the match where Drew Dober, schools him. Drew Dober, a very, very positive record in decision victories. But I think at the plus money, I think I might take Terrence McKinney once again here. Just keep riding this Terrence McKinney train. I had Faraz Ziam in the last fight, so maybe I'll zig and zag in the wrong direction here, picking Terrence McKinney, and how he loses this fight. But I think for just the stylistic matchup, I think Terrence McKinney might, have a heyday here. I mean, I think he could probably go toe-to-toe with him on the feet. Like I said, he's got the striking early. He's got the striking, the reach advantage here. He's got the wrestling in his back pocket as well. I can't imagine at 155 and as athletic as Terrence McKinney is, I can't imagine that his gas tank would really fail him here against Drew Dober. Unless he tries, I mean, the issue is, even though Terrence McKinney is a fast finisher, a powerful striker, Drew Dober is one of the most durable people in the lightweight division. So, I could see a submission happening, though. That could be a path to victory. Maybe he stings him with fast punches, gets Drew Dober to the ground, kind of like just grapples his way to a submission here. I could see that being a path, either in round 1 or round 2. You got to imagine you got to favor Drew Dober if it goes late, just based on the unknowns. But it is an unknown, and for a fight that I feel like, could be kind of a coin flip here as far as what we know about these two guys. Coming off of just momentum alone, I want to take the underdog here. We've got a guy who's on, an incredible run in Terrence McKinney, and a guy who's been in a bit of a slump here, looking for a comeback in Drew Dober. So, downward trajectory, an upward trajectory for the underdog. I will take the underdog. I'll take Terrence McKinney. Again, as an underdog, I think he continues this win streak, and he cruises his way to a submission win in round 2. Up next, we got a bout at 205, and what a weird one it is, honestly, between Carl Robertson and Khalil Rountree Jr. This is a very odd fight, just because Khalil Rountree just is in odd fights. I mean, the guy is very unpredictable. I can never get a good read or feel very comfortable about betting on him or even betting against him, because I feel like sometimes he turns up and he's a very big knockout threat on the feet. I mean, obviously, he came in against highly acclaimed kickboxer Gokhan Saki, and was able to kill him off when he came to the UFC. Now he's been losing to guys like Marcin Prachnio, getting tripled up on the numbers striking-wise against him. So just very hard to get a pinpoint read on where he's at, because sometimes he comes in very lackadaisical, very low volume, like in the Prachnio fight, and sometimes he comes in and just makes quick work of his opponent. Carl Robertson is a guy who... you kind of see where he is. He's got a well-rounded game, pretty good striking, pretty good submissions, but he's, always getting, by some of the top guys in the division, he's getting finished. Like Marvin Vettori finishes him. Brandon Allen submits him, of course. Cesar Ferreira, back in the day, finishes him. The current champion, Glover Teixeira, finishes him. I mean, so some of these are just, expected, I'd say. Like these very, very physically strong. The top end of the division will finish this guy, but he can finish the low-level, mid-tier competition. So we're kind of just playing around to see where this guy is at. One thing that's for sure between the two, the tail of the tape is pretty similar, both about the same age, 31 for Carl Robertson, 32. Surprisingly for Rountree, I feel like Rountree should be a little bit older than that at this point. He's been around him for a while, but slight reach advantage by 2 inches for Khalil Rountree. This is going to be an odd fight because, like I said, just Rountree just makes it unpredictable. Rountree makes this where I don't want to bet it, because he could come out here. If I bet on Carl Robertson, who is now the favorite slightly, I think he opened up as the underdog, and now he's minus 125, plus 105, the underdog price on Khalil Rountree currently. If I bet on Carl Robertson, which wouldn't be a bad price tag for him, I think, I feel like I'd be so afraid of Rountree just landing something crazy powerful early on in this fight. But if I bet underdog money now on Rountree, who has that potential, he could pull one of those Marcin Prachnio performances. He just came off of a nice win against Modestas Bukauskas, but again, one of the lower end guys in the division he beat. So both of these guys were kind of still trying to get a read as to where they are in the division. So it makes sense that they are facing each other now. If I had to play this fight, I'd have to play probably like the fight doesn't go to decision, which is around minus 200-ish range, I think. Maybe the under 2.5 would be like around minus 165, minus 180. If you could find it, I'd probably play that, because I think Carl Robertson is live for either a knockout or a submission, whereas Rountree is live for the knockout. So I think that would be, I'd probably play the fight doesn't go or under 2.5 in this fight. Maybe I will get there, maybe I won't. But as far as a prediction wise, I've got to choose the guy who's got a more diverse set of skills. Carl Robertson has the key to beating. He's got the blueprint to beating Khalil Rountree, which is the wrestling to the grappling to the submission threat. That's how you beat Khalil Rountree. And I think Robertson could probably stand with him and survive, especially if that Marcin Prachnio version of Khalil Rountree shows up, that low-volume version. So, unpredictable fight. I'm not going to bet a side on this fight, but for prediction's sake, I will call Carl Robertson to get a third-round submission. Featherweight fight up next between Sodiq Yusuff and one of my favorite, I don't have many favorite fighters these days. A lot of my favorite fighters are, long since retired or dead. But Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy, one of my favorite fighters on the roster and has been for a long time. When this guy made his debut, I also had a giant afro bigger than his. So that shows you how long this guy has been in the UFC. Coming off the Ultimate Fighter way back in the day. He's had 25 fights in the UFC already. Literally grows up in the octagon. He's already 33 years old. I think when he was on the Ultimate Fighter, he was like 20, 21. So it's been some years. Plus 190 underdog, and that's how Bruce Leroy has been lately. He's been the underdog, won 5 consecutive fights so far. So he's really found his footing. Back in the day, he really traded wins and losses, pretty much consistently. Now finally got a nice streak. Not the highest level of competition, but his last fight, that was a pretty good one against Sungwoo Choi, where he, was in a lot of trouble early. And this does happen to Bruce Leroy. He gets in trouble early with the powerful striking of his opponents, but managed to get a slick submission, grab the neck of Sungwoo Choi and win the fight as a big underdog. So Sodiq Yusuff should be more of the same, kind of the fight that Alex Caceres has been, matched up against, having some success in. Very powerful striker, more physically imposing. Will Sodiq Yusuff be over Alex Caceres? He's a big guy at featherweight. Coming off of his loss now against Arnold Allen, who's pretty much able to beat him by out-grappling, out-wrestling Sodiq Yusuff in their fight. I think Yusuff's definitely going to have the power advantage, definitely going to have the power and the physicality. I think that's going to save him from some of the spots that Alex Caceres will try to get him in. Alex Caceres is a guy, by the numbers, has had mixed results on his takedown accuracy. I think looking at the stats here, offensively, he lands most of his takedowns, but a lot of those are against guys that are not as physically imposing as Sodiq Yusuff, in my opinion. I think Sodiq Yusuff will be able to, like I said, kind of, even if not by technical ability, just be able to be a little bit stronger than Caceres and get out of some of the dangerous spots he might find himself in. I don't even think he finds himself in those positions. I think he's going to outstrike Caceres in the feet very, very early and get probably a stoppage win. I hate to count out. I've counted out Alex Caceres a lot of times, even though he is one of my favorite guys in the roster. I can't help but count him out because he looks so awkward on the feet. He's got pretty technical striking, good flashy Taekwondo base he has. But, the shots really just don't have a whole lot of force behind them. And he's easily countered. Always finds himself in trouble and rocked in fights. Pretty durable as far as not getting stopped a lot of the time. But he looks like he gets rocked pretty easily against some of these more powerful strikers. So a younger guy in Sodiq Yusuff, a guy who I think is going to bounce back after the Arnold Allen loss, go back to the drawing board and really fix some of those fundamental holes in his game at 28 years old. I think he wins this fight by stoppage. Give me Sodiq Yusuff to win. I'll say first round KO TKO. Up next, a fight in the bantamweight division between Magic Marlon Moraes taking on Song Yadong. This is a fight that is, a clash of experience, but a clash of talent and momentum as well. Marlon Moraes, obviously on a downward trajectory here. A few straight losses for Magic Marlon Moraes. And, he kind of reached the top of the division, faced some of those top guys like Corey Sandhagen, Rafael Assunção, Jimmy Rivera, Aljamain Sterling. Had mixed success, a lot of success early, and now he's kind of fallen off because we see where his cardio is just atrocious when it gets outside of round one. Very, very powerful, very, very dangerous in round one. After round two, it's pretty much, he's pretty much slumped. His last fight against Merab Dvalishvili, which was such a nail-biter, having a bet on Merab in that fight, because in round one, Marlon Moraes had him in all sorts of trouble, and he can do that in round one. But round two, he took more unanswered shots than probably just about anybody in the history of the division. So, if you're going to play Song Yadong in this fight, maybe you can sprinkle in rounds 2. Maybe you can sprinkle in rounds 3 inside the distance against Marlon. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I've already done. I'm going to take Song Yadong. Probably one of the best prospects out of China outside of Zhang Wei Li, the former champion. So at 24 years old, team alpha male athlete. He's had an amazing run in the UFC so far, taking out a lot of the up-and-comers at the bantamweight division, climbing up the ranks, only losing to Kyler Phillips, only having that close fight to Casey Kenny. Other than that, his last outing against Julio Arce, where he got that early round two finish, very, very impressive. Looks to be improving, looks to have the athleticism, looks to have the goods. I'm going to take him to win. I'll say an early round two stoppage again against Marlon Moraes. So, I think the odds have him as a pretty heavy favorite here, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see where they currently lie. Yep, about -2. Oh, okay, climbing. About -250 is the average here. -250, plus 200 for Marlon Moraes. I can't even see taking a shot at Marlon Moraes. If you're going to take a shot at Marlon Moraes, you feel strongly about his experience edge or something of that nature you see, I would take Marlon Moraes to win inside round one. Other than that, I'm going to take Song Yadong to win this fight. Like I said, early stoppage, round two, KO TKO. Here we go. In the main event, we have a 205 clash between Thiago Maheta Santos and Magomed Ankalaev. And right off the gate, if you would have told me back in, I don't know, maybe like 2017, 2018, even 2019, that Thiago Santos would be a plus 400, a plus 450 underdog against somebody in this division, this quickly, I don't know. I would probably bet everything against that, but here we are. Magomed Ankalaev probably opened around like -300 or so, and now it's all the way up to -650, I see in some books, probably climbing even more. 29-year-old Russian light heavyweight, looks to be everything and more. Should be undefeated if it wasn't for tapping at the very last second, 4:59 of round 3 against Paul Craig. If it wasn't for that slip up, he'd be undefeated. Looks very, very good. Looks like he's got incredible striking, powerful guy. Not only that, but smart striking, smart game plans. This combat Sambo style he's got as a Russian 205er looks to be everything that he needs to get a title shot if he wins this fight against a 38-year-old, balancing on 2 double knee surgery to knees. Very, very low volume is Thiago Santos. Boy, has he fallen from grace. He used to be, the guy with the giant hammer on his chest, Maheta, the Hammer, that's his nickname. Used to be the scariest guy. He's got a fun highlight reel that he's left behind, in his old age against, the Jimmy Manuel fight is, one of my favorite fights to watch. One of the best round 1 and part of round 2s you'll ever see in a fight. Such a fun fight. He's got finishes over Kevin Holland, Mearshart. He's just, he was a potent finisher for a long time, and, took John Jones to, a decently close fight as well. But after that, he's just fallen off. I don't see him winning this fight. I think Magomed Ankalaev could win this fight by finish as it wears on. I think he could win it early. I think he could win it late. Probably more likely that he'll win it late, being a smart fighter that would wear Santos down. I could see him just, staying out of harm's way and winning a 5-round fight here too. But I see him winning this fight. He's parlayable in my opinion, although the odds are getting pretty crazy. I actually put him, sometimes I do these, if I see a stack of events back-to-back weeks of fights like we've had, I'll lay a multi-fight parlay out, like a Hail Mary parlay just between events. So this Magomed Ankalaev actually closes up this parlay that I have. A few of these fights got canceled, but the ones that remain are, I put 2.5 units on Ramiz Brahimaj, which cashed, Jonathan Martinez, which cashed, Umar Nurmagomedov, Covington, and now closing out that now 5-leg parlay is Magomed Ankalaev, -400 odds I've gotten him at. So, he's closing out this parlay. I already have action on him in that, so don't really need much more. If some of the props catch my eye, I'll let you know. But right now, I don't know about time props in this fight. I just know that Magomed Ankalaev should, without a doubt, win this fight. At -650, we're just leaving that puncher's chance, that kick's chance, that knee's chance for Santos, which is all that I think he's got in this. So the line, as crazy as it is, I kind of do agree with the probability that the bookmakers are giving him here. Give me Magomed Ankalaev. I'm going to say either a 3, 4, or 5-round finish here. And there you have it, all 14 fights for UFC Vegas 50. Ankalaev versus Santos. This is a really, really fun card. A lot of underdog picks in this card. So whenever there's a fight card like that where it's very, very volatile, a lot of underdogs I see coming through. It's going to be crash or burn, I feel like. So I think you can pick a lot of these underdogs, and then hopefully some of them come through. The majority of them come through. Hopefully all of them come through, but they probably won't. I can't even count up how many underdogs I have in this. It's more than usual for a 14-fight offering. But it should be a fun night of fights. I'm excited for it. I'll put out my best bets video in a day or two, so stay tuned for that. And good luck in all your betting action this weekend. We will see you next time.